Hi, Malaika. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to
I
see
am
you.
good. Now, first of all, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Okay, all right. So I describe myself as an HR academic. So I'm an HR practitioner, been working in the field for over 20 years, a long time. And I'm also in the academic space. So I'm an HR professor at a university, where I teach undergraduate and graduate students different HR courses. And added to that, a core part of my function is that I do research. I specialize in workplace aging. So I explore different aspects of aging from an organizational standpoint and look at things like business continuity and how we help organizations to continue to thrive even when employees retire. And I also look at retirement rather, from the individual standpoint and factors that influence transition to retirement, influence re-entry into the workforce, and how we can help persons to transition to retirement. So that's like in a nutshell what life looks like and what I do in terms of career. Anything to do with workplace aging is my area of focus.
That's good. And I want to kind of maybe we have to do it another time where we're going to the whole ageism
Yes, yes, all
in the
of that.
workplace. Because that's a
All
big
of that.
topic now too.
That's a
But
big issue. Mhm.
but for today, I want to talk about retirement planning, not from the
Okay.
financial part, but how to just prepare ourselves, as workers, as employees,
Mhm.
for retirement.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we focus on. So, as you mentioned, typically when people talk about or think about retirement planning, then the immediate thought process goes to the finances and the financial aspect of it. But there's so much more that goes into retirement planning. And when we talk about retirement planning, we're really just looking at what life should look like or what we want life to look like once we've decided to exit the traditional or the formal world of work. So the retirement planning, just like we plan for different stages of our lives, right? So we plan when our kids are going to school, we plan for college, we plan for careers. Then the plan is, the retirement planning is, what do we do once we have exited the formal world of work? And what do we want life to look like once we have gotten to that stage? So typically people are looking at maybe age 60 to 65 for when they exit the formal world of work, the traditional world of work. So the retirement planning is, how do we plan for life once we have decided to exit the workforce and whatever that might look like for you once you have gotten to that stage. And the planning can include, for some people, career planning, because some people will continue to work.
Okay.
The planning is also the emotional planning. The planning is also psychological. There are a lot of different aspects that go into it, not just the financial, although that's an important component, so we don't leave it, right? But it's also the holistic aspect of it for persons once they've gotten to that stage or as they approach that stage, how we plan for it.
All right. You said you know, retirement is like for persons 60 to 65. And I'm in a group that
Yes.
we call ourselves the Golden Girls.
Okay. Okay.
We have had our kids already, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us one, some of us two, three, but we're done with the
Mm-hmm.
kids thing.
Okay. Right.
And we finished with school basically. Everybody have
Mm-hmm.
their masters, them PhD, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been in the workforce for like over 30 years now,
Right. Mm-hmm.
so we're like in the late 30s, 40s,
Thought is
that sort of
that
thing.
age group. Mm-hmm.
So I'm always an advocate for retirement planning. So
Mm-hmm.
is it that we should start looking at retirement from now or wait till 60, 65?
No, no. So when we talk about when to start planning for retirement, if you talk to the finance persons, and they will tell you that you start to plan from day one, right? The truth is, ideally, once you hit what we call, and we don't want to say older, but if you're in your 40s, for instance, and up, then you really want to start thinking about your retirement. You should think about it from before, right? Because you're planning for different stages. But the traditional and the formal planning for your retirement is going to have to start or should start at age 40. A lot of persons, when I do my research and conduct interviews with them, what comes up all the time is the time to plan. From a career standpoint, we have a term that we use, which is called the final five. And it is those last 5 years before you exit the workforce when heavy, heavy planning should take place. And you should really be very deliberate about your planning. But when we used to talk about the final five, the world kind of looked a little differently.
Yeah.
What life looks like now and how things constantly evolve, you want to start that planning earlier sometimes. And sometimes you don't even know what life will look like. So I spoke to somebody recently, for instance, and he had started his 5-year plan, but then AI and those things came up, and he's like, he could never have anticipated those things, and it changed the planning. But in terms of when you start planning, then absolutely you want to start looking at, I've hit 40, I've done all those things that you've mentioned. Let me start putting small plans into place. But the truth is, a lot of when you start depends on what your life looks like and what you want life to look like. And when you start to plan, might be a little different than when I start to plan, but you don't want to wait until the 60 or until the 65 to start planning. By that time, it's a little late, it gets a little close, and then you start to get a little uncomfortable and stressed. So you want to start the planning from before that. If you can't start at 45, if you've not started at 40, then that's okay. You just don't want to wait until you approach the 60 and then you wonder, what am I going to do? So you certainly want to start planning from early.
Yeah, because I know, because I'm about the next stage of my life now is retirement.
It's a reality.
Yeah, I keep saying that now I'm looking to retirement, and people
Yeah,
laugh
it's a
at me because
reality.
they're like, "You're
No,
young. Why are you?"
you're young, but you're not gonna be young forever, right?
That's it. So when I talk about now retirement and I need to start planning for retirement, people look at me a certain way, but
No,
it's
it's
the
the right thing to
reality.
do. It's the reality. And I keep saying to people, we're planning for every other stage of life, right? So you leave UA or whichever university you went to, and you plan for your job. You make plans before going into college. So you plan. And then you get a job and you plan for your career. You think about, how do I get that promotion? What next certification do I need? We plan for motherhood, we plan for marriage, we plan for all of these wonderful things that life will bring, buying the house. But for some reason, people not thinking that I need to plan for that other stage of life. And the reality is we're having these longer lifespans, thank God, right? So we're living longer, we're living healthier. We need to also plan for what life will look like when you get to that stage. And the sooner you can start the planning, then you have a better experience once you get to that stage. So, if you start already, that's good, right? So the starting at 40 is advisable. And I want to say commendable because a lot of people are not doing that, but you certainly want to start planning. Absolutely.
Good, good.
Absolutely.
I don't mean mad then.
No, you're not mad. No, you're doing the right thing.
But we talk about a lot of people will just look at the financial aspect
Yeah.
of it. But there's also the emotional part of it, because I know persons that have retired, and when they retire, and I know of persons like in my age group that speak about their parents also,
Parents.
that when they retire, like it take a toll on them emotionally and mentally because they weren't prepared mentally and emotionally for staying home, not getting up, not on the move, that sort of thing. So, what are some of the emotional and challenges that people often face when transitioning into retirement?
That's what you mentioned. So a lot of persons get to the point of retirement and there's a loss of identity and there's this loss of sense of self. So particularly for persons who would have been tying their identity for a number of years to their role. So they were the manager here or the CEO there or the director there. It becomes difficult for a lot of persons to transition to that retirement space and not having that job title that's attached, right? So that becomes a challenge for a lot of persons. I remember a gentleman saying, I was so and so, and now my wife sent me out to buy bread, right? So it affected him greatly because he had lost that sense of self, that sense of identity. And that's a very big challenge for a lot of persons. And so we have to kind of think about, what do I want to do and who will I be in retirement so that I'm not affected when I lose that job title and I lose that status. because the reality is a lot of persons will lose a status when they lose that job title. So that's a big challenge that a lot of persons face. And a lot of persons face a challenge just in terms of what does life look like now that I have retired? Because life is going to look differently and they haven't thought about what life will look like. And so that becomes a challenge for a lot of people. And then there's also the health challenge that sometimes comes about. There's a wellness challenge that sometimes comes about. So those are some of the challenges that we find that happens if we have not planned or thought about what life will look like. And then there's sometimes a shock, right? And a lot of it depends on sometimes why we retire and when. Some persons are retiring sooner than they had anticipated. And so that becomes a challenge for them because they did not expect to retire. The job, sometimes there's redundancy, you lose your job, and so you end up having to go into a retirement space that you had not anticipated being in. And that becomes a very big challenge for a lot of persons. The loss of self, loss of identity, all of those things become problematic for some people. Not everybody have that experience, but certainly for some people it becomes challenging.
Yeah, and it's important for us to think about what do we want life to be when we retire for true. Because as I say, I know people who they've retired and since being retired and at home, like the health gone down, they stay at home and work themselves to death. To actual death, because you can't go there, nobody won't hire you anymore, or the skill set is not readily used anymore because of the technology and that sort of thing. So just not mentally preparing and emotionally, and these are people that have house, have them assets, they have family around them, but is, as you said, is just not being prepared and seeing yourself. Loss of identity.
It's a loss of identity. And what happens is a lot of persons are comfortable when they are no longer in that quote unquote CEO role or whatever role you were in, managerial role, but they found something to replace that. So you always need something. So when I do interviews, for instance, with retirees, the ones who successfully retire, for want of a better term, are the ones who have been able to find something else to do. So some persons will share that they're no longer the manager or the CEO or whatever it is, but they always wanted to do this particular degree or this particular course, or they always wanted to travel. So once they've been able to find something that gives them meaning and fulfillment, then they don't have to worry about the emotional and the psychological challenges that other persons have. But for those persons who have not found something to replace that 9-to-5 activity or that world of work activity, then that's when the challenges set in, and that's when the health issues set in. And they stay home, unfortunately, and don't do as much as they could have, right? And the depression sets in, and depression leads to other things. But once you have found something to continue to give life meaning and to do something that you enjoy, whatever that might look like, because for everybody it is going to look differently, then I find that the emotional burdens or the emotional challenges, they're certainly minimized, or in some instances they don't even come up at all because you have already made plans and you know what you want to do.
So how can then the workplace, because we have been working at this place for 20 years, 30 years, some people over 40 years, they've been working from the leave school, they've been working at that one place, the same set of people, everything, same processes. How can the workplace help us or prepare us? Do they have a part in helping to prepare us for retirement?
Absolutely. And that's a good question, because certainly from an HR standpoint, one of the things we want to do is make sure that we help our employees in that transition to retirement. So there are a number of things that we as a workplace or as a business can do to help persons. One immediate things that come to mind is, and a lot of organizations do this and do it well, is the retirement planning sessions. But to ensure that when we have these retirement planning sessions, it's not just financial planning that we're talking about, right? So a lot of us go to these financial retirement planning sessions, our jobs, and we have somebody come in and talk to us about our pension, which is fine, but not anything else. The workplace has to ensure that when we have these sessions, that we also include the psychological aspect of it.
Yes.
I did a session recently with an organization, and I was able to talk to the employees about careers in retirement, right? So it means that some of you will want to continue working. Some of you might have to continue working. Let's have that conversation now in the retirement planning session. As part of that session, we also had somebody come in and talk about wellness. What does your health and wellness look like in retirement? So the workplace has that kind of responsibility to have the sessions, but also to ensure that the sessions include a wide aspect and a wide array of conversations. Another thing that HR or that the workplace can do is to rethink how we look at retirement. So traditionally, the employee get to 60, the employee get to 65, and then we start to process retirement and we start to process the exit. But we don't have to do that, right? It doesn't have to look that way. So HR or the business can start to say, what can I do to have this retirement transition look a little differently? So instead of when this date come, we tell you thanks and you go home and you just go, right? Which is traumatic for a lot of people. Don't have to do it like that. So we can look at things like the business can look at offering phased retirement options, for instance. So instead of you leaving in one go, then we say, okay, fine, let's work out a plan. Let's work out a process with our employee. So for the next year, for the next 2 years, then we can kind of start to scale back. And that allows you to gradually transition into retirement. You work 3 days for the week. While you're working, you can also start to explore your other personal options, your other personal projects, so that you gradually transition into retirement. And you gradually transition into retirement. And then once you get to that point, then it's a phased process. And so you smoothly go into it instead of this cut and dry thing. Other organizations also help employees to set up businesses. Suppose I want to start going into a business. I know that when I go into retirement, I want to become an entrepreneur. I want to open a small shop. I want to go back to school, things of that sort. The organization can, if there are resources available, support the employees along that way, also as part of the transition. So there's a lot that we can do instead of just saying, all right, when June 30 come,
that's it.
harvest, and then that's it. We really don't have to do it like that. We have to support our employees as best as we can and provide them with these different options so that they can gradually smooth into retirement, and also consider things like the re-entry, right? And allow your employees, if they need to or if they would like to, allow your retirees to re-enter, and it benefits your employees so they can come back in, work maybe 2 days a week, do some training with the employees who are still in the workforce, do some consultancy with the employees, bring them up to speed so that there can also be benefit. So there's a lot that the business can do to help employees to prepare for retirement. Absolutely. A lot that can be done.
And I love the phased, that phase process, because when you go through that little phase where maybe I come in and I work, maybe 3 days out of the week, that sort of thing.
Yes.
It gives me time also to think about what else can I do.
Can I do? Exactly.
Because the times you get at home,
it's not enough time.
or maybe you work from home or something in that little couple of days, you have a little time to think, okay, so my time winding down, what else can I do? So that kind of give you that little wiggle room, to think
gives
about.
You that wiggle room.
So that it don't just today,
it don't just
towards
creep
the day,
upon you.
it don't just creep upon you. So I like that it's a phased approach.
Yeah, and you get to experience what life will look like when you wake up and you don't have to jump up and rush to go into office. You get to feel and start to enjoy what it will look like and get accustomed to that new life while working, while continuing to contribute, and while continuing to earn. So it's very beneficial to take that approach.
And I never even thought of it, because I know people too that they have been in preparing for retirement, they like farming and that sort of thing.
Right.
So they started farming, or buy a piece of land and then start doing them little things. And then so it was just seamless when they went into retirement. Then they just stay on them farm and then them start sell them produce and do them things. So they're doing what they love.
Yeah. But I started from when they were still doing the regular work. Yeah. So you do that transition, it helps.
So I like that. I like the phased approach.
It's a phased approach, yeah.
I think I would ask for a phased approach.
Yes, and employees need to do that, right? So even if your organization has not offered it, then don't be afraid to raise it, because sometimes I don't even know that that is something you'd be interested in. And there's nothing wrong with going and saying, I'd like to propose this, or I'd like to ask that, and allow the organization to design that. I want to tell you quickly that there's a company I did work for, and what they did was partner with a training institute. Like, they partner with Heart, because Heart has all these courses. And on a Saturday, they would come in and allow Heart to train the people who are approaching retirement and things like dressmaking, cooking, entrepreneurship, because they expressed that once they leave the workforce, somebody wanted to start a business because she had always been interested in sewing and things of that sort, but never had time because you're so focused on your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And the company said, fine, we will give you this course. And the person who went to her, did that, and she was able to start a business while working and before she got to retirement. So it helps instead of the cut and dry approach.
I love
Which
that.
can
And I
be
love the mentor type, because
oh yeah.
sometimes when you just exit, you're so focused on just getting things done to exit
Yes,
sometimes that you don't
yes,
even have the time to mentor the ones coming behind you.
exactly.
So
And to
I
do the
like that too.
handover. Yeah, absolutely.
That the
Absolutely.
handover can take place after, even for a period of time, so that it's
Yes.
still a little bit phased and cut and dry.
Yeah, yeah, there are many options. There are many options, and we just have to acknowledge that we don't have to do the traditional get to this date, thank you, and move on. We don't have to take that approach.
So how do we emotionally walk me through now, like, what should I be doing and thinking in my 40 plus enough years going to retirement?
How you should plan emotionally.
Yes.
So what the emotional aspect of it, and I guess a
What
lot
am I
of
supposed to be thinking about now?
you
Like,
want to think about
specifically.
you want to think about really envisioning what life ideally will look like. So don't think about what life looks like now. Think about, what do I want my life to look like? And then kind of do it in steps. So I want life to look like this. What do I need to do so that life can actually look that way? Right. So this is what I want. I want to be able to X, whatever that X might be for you. Some persons want to travel, for instance. I know some retirees who I've spoken to, and they will tell me they deliberately wanted to have a life where they could explore the world and do it while they were in good health. And so they made um a deliberate approach to doing that. Somebody said they sold their house and they downsize. So they moved from this big house where they have all the children living in there. And they said, we've made this deliberate decision that this is what we want to do. They buy a smaller space so that there is money that can fund, excuse me, that travel or whatever it is. So from the emotional standpoint, you want to kind of look at, what do I want life to look like, and then make those plans. A lot of persons will require and decide to do counseling, right? I think culturally we might not be as in love with the counseling thought, right? We're not necessarily a counseling kind of society, but it is not necessarily counseling because something is wrong. This is a retirement coach. Some people get a retirement coach, and that retirement coach can help you to design that life, right? And the counselor can help you to be mindful of the
I
things
like
that
that.
might be an issue for you in your retirement, right? So they get that retirement coach or they get that counselor, and they sit down and they work with the counselor and say, this is what I want to do. And the counselor can map out a plan, or the retirement coach, right? Some people might prefer the word coach. The retirement coach can map out a plan, and that plan can say, this is what we need to do. And the plan has timelines, right? So
Yes,
then
I like
year
that.
one, this is what we are going to do in the 5 years before we retire. This is what we're going to do in the 4 years before we retire, the 3 years until we get down to those 6 months before retirement. And a lot of people also incorporate, just like how we have mentorship in the workplace, there's mentorship outside of retirement. Talk to people who have journeyed before you, right? So talk to your friends or your colleagues or your coworkers who have already embarked on retirement, and have them share with you some of those emotional challenges. I find, certainly from my interviews, that once persons get to that stage, there's a lot of openness to share and a lot of willingness to share.
Yes.
I tell you that this is what I struggled with when I got to retirement. And somebody else will be able to say, this is what I struggled with, this is what I did. There's an approach that some people call their family together. I've seen it. And they ask everybody to write down things about who you are, things that you need to work on, things that they suggest that you can do. And then they all come up together as a family to discuss what is the best strategic approach for you going into retirement. So I think I want to emphasize it's not a one approach.
Yes.
Everything is not a one approach, right? So I might need to go and sit down with a retirement coach, and that might be that works for me. Somebody else who might be in a relationship, a partnership, they can talk to their spouse and they can plan with their wife or plan with their husband and say, this is what we are going to do. This is what we would like to do. And they make that kind of planning because they know the emotional challenges. They know what their life looks like. So there are different options that are available, but you just take the option as best based on your situation at the time. Yeah, that's right. There are different options available to persons, but it's not a one. It's
one size fits all.
It's not a one size fits all because our lives are so dynamic, right? And our lives all look so differently. But it's important to acknowledge that it is something that we all have to do, but we can do it in different ways.
I love that. So in wrapping up, I like to give a little what I've learned from you. And it's retirement planning is not just planning financially.
No,
but it's also looking at the emotional, the psychological aspect of it also. And it's looking at what do I want life to look like in retirement, in that stage. Not what's happening now, but what do I want to do
once I get to that point?
In that stage of life, the retirement. And to make, as you said, deliberate approaches or plan deliberately for that life that I want in retirement. Because I know in retirement, I want me and my husband to just travel the world. If we feel like get up and look on him and him look for me and just relax.
And that's fine, right? Some people, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm happy with that,
Like I don't want my retirement to look like that. So you see, that's fine, right? People ask me and I say, I want to continue working, but everybody's different. So some people want to do what you want to do, and that's fine.
Want to relax. Look at the sun, the sky, the moon. No work.
No, and that works. That works for you, and you don't have to plan for it.
Exactly. And you also suggested that we could get, or recommended that we could get a retirement coach or retirement. The persons who find it hard sometimes to think about what's the next step could go that route.
Absolutely.
And when you're planning for the retirement timelines, and this is one of the best advice you could give, timelines. I didn't even think about the timeline part of it because I'm thinking about retirement from now, but the timeline, I never ever thought that, okay, I should put timeline on things.
Put the timelines on it. And when I talk to persons and when we talk about how we plan retirement, we do it in terms of the year. So we literally have a grid, and the grid is like year 1, year 2, year 3. What are the things that I have to do in each year, right? And it helps you to not have the pressure because you're not bulking everything into this short time and getting panicked. No, you do this in year 1, you check it off and you relax. You do it in year 2, you check it off and you relax. And that's where the coach comes in, right? Because the coach can help you to be accountable. Or even if it's a friend or a spouse, whoever it is. But timelines help because you know that this is a date by when such and such is supposed to happen. And you can work towards that date as opposed to just having it kind of floating in the air. Oh, I want to do this, but I'm not sure if it's going to do. You have a timeline that says this is when I'm going to do it and you work towards that. It absolutely is very beneficial without any doubt.
And I'm going to do that because with my golden girls, I'm going to use them to hold me and them accountable with things.
No, do it.
We should be doing to plan for retirement.
Do it. And I like the fact that you're doing it in a group, right? So that helps. So it's a number of you who are working together so that you hold each other accountable and you can see the big vision for everybody. it's a good approach. It's a good approach.
I like that.
Absolutely.
So, Malaika, what other advice or anything else that you want to, tell
To
us or
share.
recommend for us in our retirement planning?
I think I'll share, I like to share from what we call lived experiences of others. And I think just as you've been good in terms of wrapping it up, the planning component is something that is so absolutely critical, and it's something that comes up all the time when I talk to persons about retirement. I want to emphasize, or even before, to mention that we don't want to fear retirement. There are a lot of persons who are nervous about going into that stage, but I tell people, and I want people to realize that it is an exciting time to look forward to, right? So we get excited because we get into college. We get excited because we get this new job. We get excited for the house. I want people to be excited about that phase of life because it's a wonderful opportunity, right? You get this long life, make it be a beautiful long life. But for it to be beautiful, put things in place, right? So just as we've been talking about, put plans in place and don't be concerned about if it is only this aspect of retirement or if it is only that aspect of retirement. Be mindful that your plans have to include all aspects of you, the individual. Don't only focus on the money. Some people have a lot of money, but they didn't make any plans and so they're sad, right? We don't want that.
Exactly.
Focus on all aspects of it. So look forward to the retirement. It's a wonderful stage of life. People who have spoken to, it's wonderful. But plan for it so that you can enjoy that wonderful stage of life and be deliberate in your planning. Be deliberate in planning the whole aspects of your retirement and then move towards it gracefully. Move towards it.
Great advice. Great. And I
Move
just
towards
love
it.
that advice not to fear it because
Don't fear the retirement.
I'll work with a lot of people and that word, once you bring up that word, sometimes it's vexation.
It's vexation, right? Because you're fear. But you will fear it if you have not planned for it. You will fear it. And then there are these misconceptions, right? So you don't want to go into the retirement with these misconceptions that this will happen, or you're not going to have this, or you're not going to have that. You don't need to be afraid, right? If we plan and we prepare and we look forward to things, then it minimizes any fear that might come into play. And then we can move into the next phase gladly and happily.
And as you said before, it's never too early or too late to start planning.
Never
So
too
you
early,
can
never too
start
late.
at
Never.
any time.
Start. We want it to start sooner rather than later.
Later,
right?
yes.
But if you have not yet started, do not be daunted by that. It just means that your planning has to be a little tighter and you have to move a little more, you have to move faster than somebody who planned before. But that's fine, right? It just means that your timeline is going to be different, but you still have time. There is time, but you don't want to put yourself under too much pressure.
Okay.
Not
Thank
too
you
much pressure,
so
no.
much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Dr. Malaika Edwards.
Thank you. Yes,
For
it was good to
coming
talk to
and
you.
sharing with me and my listeners about retirement planning.
Good
Because
to
as
talk
I
to
say,
you.
this topic is important for me. I like to share things what important to me. Because as I
Yes.
say, I've reached that stage. I'm looking to that stage of my life
Right.
now, the
Right.
retirement. And people laugh at me all the time, when I
No,
talk
tell it,
about
come
it.
on board.
So I am glad that I have you.
Tell them that I said you are doing the right thing.
Yes.
Tell them I said you are doing the right thing. And the beauty of it too, you don't have to wait until 60 to 65. That's a different conversation. But we don't have to retire at 60 or 65, right? So if you want to do it a little earlier, then that's fine. All right, that's perfectly fine. So if you have started, tell your friends that I endorse and I support you. You're doing the right thing.
Nice. You hear that, people? So
Fully
thank you
endorsed.
again for giving us these wholesome and these tips that are very useful. And I hope my listeners really understand that don't fear retirement. It's not, plan for it. Don't wait till you're
Yes.
old. Plan
Right.
from now, start planning from now. And don't fear it. It just means that you need to plan. Think about how you want your life to look like in retirement and just start planning for it.
And
Because
start
we're
planning.
getting there, people. We are getting
We
there.
are getting there. And the last thing is if you need to re-enter, if you retire and you decide that you are not enjoying it and you want to go back into the workforce and you want to do other things, there's opportunity to re-enter and to have a transition to go right back. So there are lots of opportunities. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah.
All right. So thank you again.
Good talking to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.